In today's session, we are going to explore the poem Alice Fell or Poverty by William Wordsworth. First, let us read through the poem. The post boy drove with fierce career, for threatening clouds the moon had drowned. When, as we hurried on, my ear was smitten with a startling sound. As if the wind blew many ways, I heard the sound, and more it seemed to follow with the chase, and I heard it as before. At length I to the boy called out. He stopped his horses at the word, but neither cry, nor voice, nor shout, nor aught else like it could be heard. The boy then smacked his whip, and fast the horses scampered through the rain. But hearing soon upon the blast the cry, I bade him halt again. Forthwith alighting on the ground, "Whence comes," said I, "this piteous moan?" And there a little girl I found, sitting behind the chaise alone. My cloak. No other word she spake, but loud and bitterly she wept, as if her innocent heart would break. And down from off her seat she leapt. "What ails you, child?" she sobbed. "Look here." I saw it in the wheel entangled, a weather-beaten rag as ever from any garden scarecrow dangled. There, twisted between nave and spoke, it hung, nor could at once be freed. But our joint pains unloosened the cloak, a miserable rag indeed. "And whither are you going, child, tonight, alone, these lonesome ways?" "To Durham," answered she, half wild. "Then come with me into the chaise." Insensible to all relief sat the poor girl, and forth did send sob after sob, as if her grief could never have an end. "My child, in the hymn do you dwell?" She checked herself in her distress and said, "My name is Alice Fell. I am fatherless and motherless, and I to Durham, sir, belong." Again, as if the thought would choke her very heart, her grief grew strong, and all was for her tattered cloak. The chaise drove on. Our journey's end was nigh, and sitting by my side, as if she had lost her only friend, she wept, nor would be pacified. Up to the tavern door we post. Of Alice and her grief I told, and I gave money to the host to buy a new cloak for the old, and let it be of duffel grey, as warm a cloak as man can sell. Proud creature was she the next day, the little orphan Alice Fell. Now let me give you the explanation of the poem. The poem Alice Fell or Poverty by William Wordsworth is a moving story that combines a simple incident with a deep message about empathy, compassion, poverty, and humanity. The poem begins on a stormy night. The poet is traveling in a chaise, that is, a horse drawn carriage, along with a postboy who is driving very fast because of the rough weather. The moon is hidden behind the clouds, and the atmosphere is tense and dark. Suddenly, from nowhere, the poet hears a strange sound. It's almost like a wail. At first, he is startled by it, but then it stops. He doesn't hear it again. After some time, he hears it again, now sharp and loud, and it seems like the sound is following the carriage no matter how fast it moved. Out of curiosity and concern, the poet decides to stop the carriage, and soon as he tells the boy to stop it, he stops the horses. And the poet gets down from the carriage to see from where the sound comes. On getting down from the carriage, he discovers a little girl who is crying bitterly sitting behind the carriage. It looks like her cloak had gotten caught in the wheel of the carriage and she is not able to untangle it. The poet and the little girl, with a little hard work, together pulled it out, and the poet finds that the cloak was indeed very miserable and it was almost a rag, and it was also torn apart beyond repair. Wanting to comfort her, the poet invites Alice into the carriage. Now she sits beside him, but still weeping. At least she is no longer left alone in the storm, but she forgets it and continues sobbing as if she is unhappy throughout her life. All along the journey, the poet questions her and he learns that the girl's name is Alice Fell and that she lives in Durham. She has no family, no mother or father, and there is nobody linked with her, and she is all alone. And she has nobody, not even a friend, for herself. This knowledge makes the poet feel sad for her. Throughout the journey, he tries to console her, but in vain. Alice is crying continuously, sobbing as if she had lost her best friend. The best friend here is the cloak. And till they reach their destination, she continues sobbing. Upon arrival, the poet asks the host of the tavern to buy a cloak in duffel grey for Alice. He tells him that the cloak should be as warm as any man could make it. The next day, the host, as requested by the poet, gets Alice a new cloak that is very warm, and Alice is seen very happy with her new cloak. The small act of kindness from the poet completely changes Alice's mood. She is no longer crying but is seen with a smile. From being a sad and lonely child, she becomes cheerful and proud, joyfully showing off her new garment. The poem ends on this hopeful note with Alice's sorrow eased by the empathy, compassion, and generosity of the poet. To us, a torn piece of clothing may not seem like a disaster, but to Alice, who is very poor and an orphan, it is very heartbreaking. That cloak was her only real protection against the cold weather, and losing it symbolizes how vulnerable her life really is. She has nobody to take care of her, and she takes care of her herself without any support from anybody. The poet feels a wave of sympathy for Alice. He realizes that her grief is not just about the cloak, but also about the hardships of her entire life. Poverty magnifies small losses into unbearable pains. To a poor orphan girl, a torn cloak feels like losing everything. And that is why she was crying uncontrollably earlier. But as soon as she gets the cloak, she becomes a little happy soul. Now let us look into the themes found in the poem. The very first one is poverty and innocence. Alice's tears over a cloak symbolizes how poverty makes even small misfortunes feel overwhelming. Her innocence and helplessness highlight how unfair life can be for children who have no support. She has nobody to take care of her, and it looks like from her appearance that she is not rich. She is very poor and is struggling to spend each day of her life. She is only surviving each day, and the cloak was a very important part in her life as it was the only mode of help that she had to keep herself warm in that bitter weather. And also, she looks very innocent because she is seen crying over that small piece of clothing, and it looks like she is unconsolable throughout. She doesn't ask help from the poet, and this marks her innocence in the poem. The next theme is empathy, compassion, and kindness. The poet does not ignore Alice's sufferings. Instead, he acts with kindness, offering her a ride, listening to her, and finally buying her a new cloak. Wordsworth suggests that such acts, though small, can completely change someone's life. This is seen in the poem because the small act of kindness of buying a new cloak for Alice changes her entire day and maybe also her life. It made her positive, and she also ran around smiling instead of crying. The poet doesn't give her much money, but he has shown her much compassion and kindness, and that changes Alice's life altogether. And this is seen at the end of the poem where she is happy with her new garment and she is proudly walking with it. The next theme is the value of humanity. Of course, humanity is seen through the poet in this poem. The poem is not just about a torn cloak, it is about recognizing the struggles of the poor and realizing that human sympathy is what truly gives meaning. And here, the poet satisfies this theme by sympathizing with Alice, and he tries his best to help her out of her hard situation. This poem reflects William Wordsworth's larger philosophy that poetry should focus on ordinary people, simple incidents, and real emotions. He wanted to show that beauty and depth can be found in everyday lives, even in the story of a poor orphan girl. By sharing Alice's story, Wordsworth reminds us that compassion is one of the highest human qualities and it matters a lot. That poverty is not just about lack of money, but about the deep emotional weight carried by the poor, and that even the smallest act of generosity, a warm cloak, a kind gesture, can change despair into hope. So, the next time we see someone in need, let us remember Alice Fell. Her story reminds us that humanity is built on compassion, and sometimes the smallest gift can make the biggest difference, and empathy is very important in everyone's life. Thank you.